Welcome back. We would be remiss if we did not address issues affecting the transgender community, specifically when it comes to mental health. So joining us now are two people who can walk us through what we need to know to be more sensitive and more compassionate. First, we welcome Ashton Peterson to share his story of transitioning, and Christina Law, a licensed clinical social worker who specializes in LGBTQ+ issues. Thank you both for being here.
Thank you for having me.
So first I want to start with you, Ashton. As we discussed, this is a sign of real bravery to come here and to share your story. And so we thank you, first of all, for doing that. What do we need to understand? What do we need to get right when it comes to issues of mental health and the transgender community?
Well, that's a big question.
That's a big one, right?
Yeah. But as far as what to get right, as far as I would say that believe people when they tell you who they are. That is something that will help with a lot of mental issues that a lot of transgender people deal with, is not being accepted for who they are, or the fear and stigma around being a transgender person, and that would definitely help a lot. Being accepted is important.
Believe people when they tell you who you are. That is really, that's everything, right? That is everything. And yet it is so hard, as your story speaks to, everyone understanding that.
Yeah.
Christina, you said something to me that really struck me when we talked about mental health and the transgender community. And you said, and I don't want to paraphrase for you because you said it so distinctly, that being transgender does not mean that you have a mental health issue.
Correct.
So that is such an important takeaway for people who are watching this to get. Share that with me.
So historically, there have been mental health issues surrounding people who identify as transgender, gender identity disorder, and even gender dysphoria, and that makes people think that there's some sort of a mental illness that's associated with that. And that's not necessarily true. You could absolutely identify as transgender and not have any mental health issues at all.
Absolutely, absolutely. And your practice right now, as many clinicians will tell you, it is not easy to get an appointment.
Sure.
You have a waiting list, correct?
I do.
And so if I called you and said, I need help, I'm experiencing this, you would say what to me? Obviously you would be compassionate and understanding, but you would probably also say, I can't tell you when I can help you. Is that correct?
That is correct. Because you never know when someone's going to leave the practice, or maybe transition down from weekly to bi-weekly. But also, if not everyone that calls me that's transgender needs therapy. They might just need a letter of readiness. So because of insurance, most insurances require a letter stating that you are basically of sound mind and body. You have to sign consent saying that you know what you're getting yourself into, and you have to have these letters so that you can get the gender-affirming hormone therapy or any surgeries. So if that's the case, I do everything that I can to help those folks.
The need is great. I mean, when you look at the statistics when it comes to the transgender community, studies have shown 2 times more likely to be depressed or experiencing anxiety. And sort of the systemic pressures are huge, whether it's familial issues, correct? We've talked about family, whether it's discrimination, stigma, harassment, violence, minority issues. There's so much pressure, right? Ashton, how do you cope with that pressure? And what advice would you give other people who are experiencing that?
So I surround myself with a community of people who support and love me and affirm me for who I am, and that has been an integral part of my journey.
Christina, Ashton's very fortunate to have that experience with his family and to have that acceptance and recent validation. For you, in terms of your work with clients, how much of a struggle is it to have that familial validation, and how much does the stress from family contribute to anxiety and depression?
I don't think that most families or most parents, when their child comes to them and says, I'm transgender, say, oh my God, that's great. You know, because they don't understand it. Generationally, it's different. You know, growing up, when I was growing up, that term did not exist. And so it's a huge struggle because parents have so many questions and they want to be accepting and they want to love you and they want to love you as who you are, but then they have all these questions to ask, and then maybe you don't feel validated, you know, in your experience. But the majority of people that come out as transgender have a struggle, whether it's with work or changing names or going to doctors or with your family or with church. I don't think anyone has a very easy path to go down.
Yeah. If we lost all our recording of this conversation and only one particular soundbite or quote survived, what would you want that to be? So what would you want to be that one takeaway that someone would have watching this?
Well, that transgender people are people, and that, you know, how you treat people matter and affect their mental health. So just keep that in mind.
Right,
Christina?
and that being transgender is not a mental health diagnosis. It's how we identify.
There you go. Thank you both. Thank you for your bravery, and thank you for helping us understand things better.
Sure.